Welcome to This Week in Crowder College, an in-depth look into how Crowder College students, faculty, and staff are working together so students soar to new heights, communities are impacted, and lives are changed. This Week in Crowder College is sponsored by the law offices of Wood and Peterson in Neosho, specializing in workers' compensation, personal injury, Social Security disability, and more. Learn more online at neoshoattorney.com. Now here's this week's edition of This Week in Crowder College.
Welcome to a brand new week of This Week in Crowder College right here on 91.7 FM. Adam Winkler here with you. And this week we'll be continuing our conversation with Jorge Zapata about the travel seminar the Ag students went on in late May from Crowder College. So let's rejoin that conversation with Jorge Zapata from Crowder College.
And then we went over to Oklahoma to Shawnee. They had a tornado on April 16th that was 2,300 yards wide. And 160 mile an hour winds tore that town up. So it looked like it just happened in some neighborhoods. And so we spent the day there volunteering with the community relief effort there. And when I tell you we moved tons, we literally moved tons of debris. It was great to pitch in and help and be able to contribute just a little bit. So that, as always, you know, Crowder is a big servant leadership proponent for our students, and the Aggies definitely practice the servant leadership that we learn about in our education there. So that was super cool, and we'll be able to give back. We ran over to Oklahoma City, did the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, which is always a great treat. The amount of history and art and artifacts and, you know, the settling of the West was awesome. Just to go through there. I could spend hours there. But we spent a couple hours exploring that, and we ran up to Stillwater to the Oklahoma State Beef Division. We went through their equine and sheep facilities and their meat science facilities and had a great tour there. OSU is a really premier ag school as well, so we were really happy to be able to do that. We popped down into Texas from there and went to the Four Sixes Ranch, and they are one of the premier breeders of quarter horses in the world, and so that was really great for us to be able to spend. We spent half a day there just touring and exploring, and they let us sit and watch, do all kinds of cool veterinary things like embryo transfers and using ultrasound to check embryo development and things like that. So that was great, especially for our animal science and pre-vet kids. They were just in awe, of course, of that. We drove up to Dodge City, Kansas from there and went to a 15,000 acre wheat farm, and we learned a lot about irrigated and dryland wheat. Students were just enthralled with our tour there. The owner, his name was Blake. He was super engaging and was just really poured into those kids. And even if they didn't have a whole lot of interest maybe as a, per se, wheat grower, he had a lot to tell them about how business and agribusiness works. So that was always great. Dodge City, we stayed there and went to a couple feedlots. We went to a roto mixer plant where they build these giant, they look like giant blenders for cattle feed, and you pour all the ingredients in and out spits out the feed, and it's a big operation. So it was really great to see how those were built. We went down to the Santa Fe Trail where you can see the ruts of the Santa Fe Trail that made its way down through us and across Kansas and into New Mexico, and that was pretty cool. By this time, Wednesday, we'd been on the road for about 8 days, so we went over to Brookover Feed Yard in Garden City. Nice feed yard. They fed about 40,000 head of cattle, and we got a really great tour of how that feeding industry works and how the growth that they put on those cattle is measured, and just the care that they take to make sure that those animals are developed correctly. And then we spent the afternoon over at the Garden City Zoo, where the students had a super cool experience. We got to go hang out with the rhinos and feed them their afternoon meal, and just the zookeeper there was very insightful and just gave us a super tour behind the scenes about all the things that happen at the zoo. And the zoo is just really fantastic for the size of the zoo it is. And that evening we went over to Duff's Buffalo Ranch over in Scott City, Kansas, where they have about 200 head of buffalo on 3,000 acres. And so those buffalo are not seen super often, as far as they're not like they maybe see them 2 or 3 times a year in the pens. So that was really neat. that you used to see, a couple hundred head of buffalo running at you because they were wanting some feed. But to imagine how it was like in the 1800s when the explorers were coming through there and settling the West that was quite a sight to see. We wrapped up the tour with in Wichita, Kansas. We went to a place called Rise Farms, which is one of the largest rooftop farms in the country, and they have about 20,000 feet of roof space where they're growing all kinds of specialty crops up there, and they have 240 solar panels up there that they're pumping electricity back into the grid. So that was really great to see a different use of the facilities and the space up there. I think that's something that we'll see in the future. We popped over to Gertie's Lavender Farm, which used very small acreage to turn a small business and the lavender gathering and the crafts and all the things that you can do with the leaves and the oil and all that. And that was really great to see that, people could use an acre or two and make a side hustle out of that. And then we wrapped up our tour with a dairy farm south of Wichita, the Dalbum Dairy, and we spent the afternoon there where they were fixing to bring in cows to milk. They were like a fifth generation dairy, so it was really neat to hear the history of how they settled that area and how the progression of dairying had changed in the past 50 years. So that was super. And then we finally made it home. So 10 days, 2,700 miles, and 26 tours wrapped up our travel seminar.
Well, the Aggies don't sleep. They just go and go and go. And some of the hardest workers out there. And it's amazing what you guys can fit in a 10-day span and give these kids experiences that they wouldn't get at a lot of four-year universities and let alone a junior college. Freshmen. But
Absolutely.
you guys really make sure that's a priority because you want to set them up the right way.
One of the girls that travels with us, she's been with us. She was actually our outstanding graduate, Bonnie Robbins. She's from Southwest High School. And she totaled up the number of miles that she traveled with us because through contests and through travel seminars and just every opportunity that we gave her, she jumped in the van and went. She went 15,400 miles with us in 2 years.
Wow.
And she's like, I've never gotten these opportunities if I hadn't just said yes and jumped in the van every time you guys went somewhere. And that's the truth. I tell the students that they're probably more well-traveled than the person they're sitting across interviewing them as far as seeing agriculture from a 30,000-foot view and understanding how the world works. And so that's the whole point of these is to have, when you sit down with a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company and they take 2 hours of their day to talk to you about how life works, you listen.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that many times they say the same things that their instructors have said, but now it becomes gospel because they said it.
Well, it's amazing to hear about your team's travels. And Jorge, we just always appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with us on This Week in Crowder College and keep up the great work.
Always brag on our students. They're doing great things.
Thank you for listening to This Week in Crowder College. This Week in Crowder College is sponsored by the law offices of Wood and Peterson in Neosho. You can listen to this broadcast again by going online to kneo.org or to crowder.edu. Tune in once again next week for another edition of This Week in Crowder College on KNEO 91.7 FM.